Perspective Basics. Perspective is based on something really simple and obvious: far versus close. Objects that are far away are smaller than objects close to us. Take a look at these two women. We assume they are the same height, and we assume that woman B is farther back than woman A. Without any other information for distance, we assume this type of relationship. We've also created lines without realizing it. If we draw a line to connect their heads and another line connecting their feet, we create a rectangle or a plane, the basis of all perspective drawing. Foreshortening. We also have an illusion that makes perspective drawing so difficult for many people. Even though we know logically these women are about the same height, when we look at them across a distance in perspective, visually the sizes are very different. This difference in apparent size is called foreshortening. It means that the lines connecting the top and bottom tilt towards each other, even though they are the same actual height. We call these lines perspective lines. Parallel lines. Perspective objects are made by parallel lines, two perfectly straight lines that never touch each other. All squares and rectangles are made of parallel lines. If you extend their lines into the distance, they will run on forever and never connect. But we can't draw them this way. If you look at a rectangle straight on at a perfect 90-degree angle, you won't see perspective. But it's pretty rare to see rectangles this way. Most of the time, we view perspective objects at an angle. That means their sides get closer and farther. That also means these parallel lines start to tilt, eventually crossing paths. They cross paths at something called a vanishing point. Logically, you know that a hallway is about 8 feet tall and it has the same height from one side to the other. But visually, we see lines at different angles going towards a vanishing point at the end of the hall. 3 types of perspective. There are 3 ways perspective lines head towards vanishing points. 1-point perspective. If you look down a hallway, we see the perspective lines merge together towards a vanishing point. You can see the same thing on big city streets or any hallway like the ones on campus. 1-point perspective is the simplest form of perspective. However, there's only so many hallways, city streets, or long straight roads we can look at before we run into the most common form of perspective, 2-point perspective. Most of the time, you look at houses and cube-like shapes from an angle, like this house. One side of the building's perspective lines go towards one vanishing point, while the other side's perspective lines go to another vanishing point. Notice that even minor objects on each flat surface, like windows, share the same perspective lines. With 2-point perspective, both vanishing points are on something called a horizon line. If you look out towards the ocean, the horizon line is where the sea meets the sky. But even in areas with mountains and busy cities, the horizon line is always there. Unlike 1-point perspective, the 2 vanishing points are usually far away from the object you're drawing. This is because we look at objects through a narrow cone of vision that is about 45 to 60 degrees from our eyes. But vanishing points are usually outside this cone of vision. 3-point perspective. We can also look at perspective lines from above or below. This brings us to 3-point perspective. In this case, the third vanishing point is very high up in the sky or very deep inside the earth.